The lighthouse stood tall on the edge of the cliff, watching over the sea like a silent guard. For years, its light had swept across the dark waters, guiding fishing boats and the few ships that still passed by this quiet coast. Most people in the town thought the lighthouse was just an old building, something pretty for tourists to look at during the summer. But Darren, the keeper, knew better. Darren lived alone in a small house right beside the lighthouse. Every evening, he would climb the spiral stairs, light the great lamp, and check the machines hidden below the tower. He had been doing this for so many years that his hands knew every crack in the stone and every sound of the waves crashing below. The townspeople often laughed gently at him. "The lighthouse is old, Darren," they would say. "Ships have modern tools now. Your lamp is not needed anymore." But Darren never argued. He simply nodded and went back to his work. Deep inside, he felt the lighthouse was more than just a tool. Sometimes, when the wind was quiet, he could hear a low hum coming from the stone floor, as if the lighthouse itself was alive. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the sea, the sky grew heavy with clouds. A storm was rolling in. Darren lit the lamp as usual, its golden light cutting through the mist and rain. But this time, something was different. The beam did not just glow, it burned brighter, almost white, like lightning frozen in the air. Darren shielded his eyes. He had never seen it shine like that before. The storm raged louder, waves slamming against the cliffs with frightening force. Yet through the thunder, Darren heard something else. A deep sound, almost like a song, rising from the ground beneath his feet. He rushed down the stairs into the lower room of the lighthouse. The old machines, hidden under layers of dust, were moving on their own. Their gears turned though he had not touched them. Strange blue sparks danced across the walls. The hum grew stronger, shaking the air around him. "What in the world?" Darren whispered, his voice lost in the storm. The light above kept burning bright, brighter than any lamp could ever burn. It stretched far out to sea, a white pillar piercing the storm clouds. Darren felt his chest tighten. It was not only a light for ships anymore. It felt like a signal, reaching beyond the horizon, calling out to something unseen. He ran outside, rain drenching his coat. The townspeople had gathered on the beach below, pointing and shouting at the strange glow. Children clung to their parents, and fishermen stared with wide eyes. None of them had ever seen the lighthouse behave this way. "Is it broken?" someone called. "Maybe lightning struck it," another voice cried. Darren stood silent. He could not tell them the truth, because he did not understand it himself. The light pulsed now, like the beat of a heart, strong and steady. And as the thunder rolled, Darren swore he heard something hidden within the crash of waves, a sound not made by water or wind. It was faint, almost like a voice. A voice calling back. The storm raged until morning. The town returned to their homes, whispering about omens and curses. Only Darren stayed awake all night, watching the strange light sweep across the sea. By dawn, the beam had faded back to normal, but the hum under the lighthouse remained. It would not stop. Exhausted, Darren leaned against the stone wall, staring at the silent lamp. He had lived beside this lighthouse his whole life, but for the first time, he felt as if he truly did not know it at all. The sea was calm now, the storm gone, but something had changed forever. Darren could feel it in his bones. The lighthouse had woken up. And deep in his heart, he knew this was only the beginning. The storm had ended, but Darren could not rest. The strange humming sound still vibrated under the lighthouse, low and steady, like a hidden heartbeat. He did not tell anyone in town about it. They already thought he was odd for living alone beside the cliffs. If he spoke of machines moving by themselves, they would laugh, or worse, they would grow afraid. That morning, Darren walked along the beach to clear his head. The sand was wet from the storm, and broken branches, seaweed, and even a few shattered fishing nets lay scattered everywhere. The waves rolled in gently now, as if nothing strange had ever happened. But Darren's eyes were sharp, searching. Then he saw her. A figure lay on the wet sand, half buried by sea foam and seaweed. At first, Darren thought it was a body the storm had thrown ashore. His heart raced as he hurried closer. But when he reached her side, he stopped in shock. It was a young woman, breathing weakly. She wore clothes unlike anything Darren had ever seen. The fabric was smooth and dark, but it glowed faintly, as if threads of light were woven through it. Her skin was pale from the cold, and her long hair clung to her face. Without thinking, Darren lifted her carefully and carried her up toward the lighthouse. She was light, almost too light, as though her bones were hollow. When he reached his home, he laid her near the fire and covered her with blankets. Hours passed before she opened her eyes. They were bright, clear, and strange, like the sky before a storm. She looked around, confused but calm. "You brought me here," she said softly. Darren nodded. "The sea washed you ashore. Are you hurt?" She shook her head. Her voice was gentle, but there was something unusual about it, as though every word carried weight. "I am Myra," she said after a pause. Darren sat back, studying her. "Myra, where did you come from? Your clothes, they're not from anywhere around here." Myra's gaze shifted to the window, where the lighthouse towered against the gray sky. "I came through the light," she whispered. Darren frowned. "The light?" "Yes." She touched her chest, as though steadying herself. "The storm woke it? The signal opened, and I was pulled here. I should not be, but I am." Darren felt a chill. He thought of the beam that had burned white and bright, the hum in the stone, the machines moving on their own. He thought of the voice he almost heard in the storm. "You're saying, the lighthouse brought you?" he asked slowly. Myra nodded. "It is more than a tower. It is a beacon. It calls across great distance. And when it calls, others can follow." Her words sent a heavy weight into Darren's chest. "Others?" "Yes," Myra said, her eyes grave. "And not all will be kind. The light is awake now, and it cannot be hidden again. Someone will come for it." Darren rubbed his forehead. It was too much to understand. All his life, the lighthouse had been his duty. A job he thought was simple: keep the lamp burning, clean the glass, check the gears. Now this stranger spoke of it as if it were a weapon or a treasure. "Why are you here?" he asked finally. Myra looked at him carefully. "Because you are the keeper. The light answers to you." Darren's breath caught. "That's not possible. I'm just a man who looks after stone and glass." But Myra only shook her head. "You will see. The sea has already changed. The sky will change next. And when they come, you must be ready." Outside, the waves struck harder against the cliffs, though no storm had returned. Darren stared at Myra, uncertain whether to believe her. She was a stranger, carried by the storm, speaking of things no one in town would ever believe. And yet, something in her eyes told him she spoke truth. That night, Darren climbed the lighthouse stairs as he always did. The lamp glowed softly now, nothing unusual to the eye. But when he laid his hand on the cold metal frame, the hum rose stronger. The light flickered, as if it recognized him. From below, Myra's voice floated upward. The signal is alive. It will not sleep again. Darren looked out over the Black Sea, his hand still on the lamp. For the first time in his life, he felt small against the wide sky, but he also felt chosen. Far out on the horizon, beyond the reach of his lamp, a faint glimmer moved. Darren narrowed his eyes. It was not a star. Something else was already answering the call. The days after the storm felt strange in the small coastal town. The sky was clear, the sea was calm, yet something in the air felt heavier than before. People whispered in the streets about the bright beam that had cut through the storm. Some said it was a miracle, others called it a warning. But no one had answers. Darren did not tell anyone about Myra. She stayed hidden in the small house beside the lighthouse. At night she watched the horizon with quiet eyes, as if expecting something to rise from the waves. Darren brought her food and asked questions, but she often spoke little. Still, she told him some things. The lighthouse was not built only to guide ships, Myra explained one evening as they sat near the fire. It was built on top of something older. A device left long before your town existed. Maybe before all towns existed. Darren frowned. Older than the lighthouse? That's impossible. My grandfather told me stories of when it was first raised, and he swore it was the oldest thing here. Myra shook her head. Your people only built around it? The real machine is buried deep under the rock. It waits until someone awakens it. And now, she looked at him seriously. It is awake. Darren tried to laugh, but the sound died in his throat. He could not forget the hum beneath his feet or the way the light had pulsed like a living heart. That night, when Darren climbed the tower to check the lamp, he noticed something strange. The beam seemed to bend. It stretched across the water, but at the far end of the horizon, the light curved upward, painting lines in the sky. He rubbed his eyes, thinking it was a trick. But the lines stayed, faint patterns glowing like thin threads. He called down to Myra. Come here. Look at this. She hurried up the steps, her glowing clothes catching the faint light. When she saw the sky, she grew pale. It has begun, she whispered. What do you mean? Darren asked. The signal is being answered, Myra said. Those patterns are not natural. They are doors opening. Soon, others will see them too. The next morning, fishermen returned from the sea with troubled faces. They said their compasses had spun in circles during the night. One man swore the stars had shifted above him, though no one believed him. Another claimed his boat had passed through a patch of water that glowed faintly blue, even though there was no moon. The town grew uneasy. Some blamed the storm, others blamed the lighthouse. A group of elders even came to Darren's house. You must turn it off, one of them demanded. The light brings trouble. Our nets are empty, our boats feel cursed. Darren shook his head. The lamp cannot be turned off. It is part of the sea. If I stop it, ships may lose their way. But deep inside, he knew it was not only about ships anymore. That night, the strange patterns in the sky grew brighter. Thin arcs of light shimmered above the ocean, like silent lightning frozen in place. Myra stood outside the lighthouse, watching them. Her face was calm but her hands were clenched tight. What are they? Darren asked. They are gates, Myra said softly. Windows between here and the beyond. The machine below the lighthouse opened them. And now, she paused. Now something is listening. Darren's chest tightened. Listening for what? For you, Myra said simply. He stared at her in disbelief. Why me? I'm no one. I'm just a man who tends a lamp. Myra looked at him with eyes that seemed far older than her years. Because the machine chose you. It does not wake for everyone. You touched it, and it answered. Darren thought of the moment when his hand brushed the lamp and the hum had risen, strong and alive. The memory sent shivers through him. Later that night, as the waves struck the cliffs, Darren heard the sound again, the one he had heard during the storm. A faint voice hidden in the roar of the sea. It was not words, not yet, but a rhythm, almost like someone knocking from far away. He leaned on the stone rail of the lighthouse, listening. The voice grew louder, carried on the wind. Myra stood beside him, her face pale in the moonlight. They are close, she whispered. Darren turned to her. Who are they? Myra's answer was heavy, as if each word cost her strength. Not friends. Not helpers. Seekers. They come for the light. They come for the key buried beneath this rock. And when they arrive, she looked out at the glowing lines in the sky. They will not ask nicely. The patterns above the sea pulsed brighter, as if answering her words. Darren felt the ground tremble beneath his boots. The lighthouse, once a symbol of safety for sailors, now felt like the eye of a storm. And somewhere far out at sea, something stirred in the dark water. The night air was heavy with silence. Only the crash of waves broke it, steady and endless against the cliffs. Darren stood at the top of the lighthouse, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The strange arcs of light still hung in the sky, thin and bright like glowing scars. Myra stood beside him, her face tense. She had not spoken much since sunset, but Darren could feel her worry. Then, out of the dark water, something moved. At first, Darren thought it was a shadow cast by the moon. But the shape grew larger, taller, until it rose fully from the sea. His breath caught. It was no ship he knew. It had no sails, no smokestacks, no wood or steel. Its surface was smooth, like black stone polished by years of waves, but it gleamed faintly with its own light. The water slid off it in sheets as it lifted higher, steady and quiet, as if it did not need to fight the sea at all. Darren gripped the railing. What is that? Myra's eyes stayed on the dark vessel. It is them, she whispered. The Seekers. The signal called them, and they have answered. The strange ship moved closer, stopping just beyond the sharp rocks that guarded the shore. No sound came from it, no engine, no waves crashing against its hull. It simply floated, silent and watching. Then, with a soft hiss, a part of the vessel opened. A long ramp stretched down, touching the wet sand of the beach below. Darren squinted, his heart pounding. Figures stepped out. They were tall, much taller than any man in town. Their bodies were thin but strong, covered in dark suits that shimmered faintly like Myra's clothes. Their faces were hidden behind smooth masks, and their movements were calm, almost too calm, as though they had done this countless times before. The townspeople had gathered at the edge of the village, staring wide-eyed at the sight. Some whispered prayers, others clutched their children close. No one dared to move closer. Darren felt a cold weight in his chest. Something deep inside told him they were not here to trade or to talk. They were here to take. Myra's hand touched his arm. They are searching, she said quietly. They know the light has awakened. They will look for the one who can command it. Darren turned to her sharply. "And you think that's me?" She nodded once. "The machine below answered to your touch. The Seekers can sense that. They will not stop until they find you." Darren looked down at the beach again. The tall figures spread out, their heads turning as if scanning the land. One of them raised a hand, and a faint beam of blue light swept across the sand, crawling toward the lighthouse. "They're coming here," Darren said, his voice tight. "Yes," Myra answered. Her eyes were steady now, though her body was tense. "You must choose. You can run, or you can stand." Darren's heart pounded in his ears. Run. Where could he go? The lighthouse was his life, his duty. If he fled, the town would have no guard. And deep inside, something stronger than fear stirred in him. He could not leave. "I'll stand," Darren said at last. His voice shook, but the words felt solid. Myra studied him, then gave a small nod. "Then we prepare." Together they hurried down the spiral stairs into the lowest chamber of the lighthouse. The hum from the machine was louder now, filling the air like a drum beat. The walls seemed to pulse with faint light. Darren touched the cold stone, and the hum grew stronger, answering him again. Myra pointed toward the far wall, where cracks in the stone glowed faintly blue. "The chamber beneath waits. It will open for you." Darren pressed his hand against the stone. At once, the cracks widened, sliding apart to reveal a hidden passage. Cool air rushed out, carrying the scent of salt and metal. Beyond was a tunnel, sloping downward into the cliff itself. Darren stared into the dark passage, his chest tight. All his life, he had walked these cliffs, thinking he knew every stone and every corner. But here was something hidden, waiting all this time beneath his feet. "They will reach the door soon," Myra said. "We must go below. Only there can you learn how to fight them." Darren swallowed hard, then stepped into the tunnel. The stone walls glowed faintly, guiding them deeper. The hum of the machine grew louder with every step, until it was no longer just a sound but a feeling, shaking his bones. Behind them, faint echoes rose, the Seekers climbing the cliff. The lighthouse had always been a symbol of safety, a light for lost ships. But now Darren realized it was also something else. It was a beacon. A call. And tonight, it had brought both a warning and a war to his quiet shore. The tunnel walls glowed with a faint blue light, just bright enough for Darren and Myra to see their way. The sound of the sea above faded the deeper they went, replaced by the steady hum that had haunted Darren since the storm. It was stronger here, like the heartbeat of something enormous hidden under the cliff. Darren's footsteps echoed on the stone floor. "How deep does this go?" he asked, his voice low. "Far enough to reach the heart," Myra replied. Her tone was calm, but her eyes were sharp, watching every curve of the tunnel as if she had walked it before. After what felt like a long descent, the tunnel opened into a wide chamber. Darren stopped, his breath caught in his chest. The room stretched higher than the lighthouse itself, its walls smooth and gleaming, carved with lines that glowed faintly. At the center stood a massive structure, half machine, half stone, shaped like a great pillar. Its surface shifted with moving lights, patterns flowing across it like rivers of fire. Darren stepped closer. The hum filled the chamber, vibrating through the floor and into his bones. The closer he came to the pillar, the stronger the glow became. "What is this place?" Darren whispered. Myra stood beside him, her voice steady. "This is the root of your lighthouse. What you call a lamp above is only the surface. This is the source, the true beacon." Darren stared at the pillar, shaking his head. No one ever told us this existed. My father kept the lamp. His father before him. But none of them ever spoke of this. They did not know, Myra said softly. The machine hides itself until the time comes. Until someone chosen by it is near. Chosen. Darren turned to her. Why me? I'm just a keeper. I light a lamp, I sweep the floors, I mend stone when it cracks. That is all. Myra's eyes glowed faintly in the chamber light. Because you never abandoned it? You kept the lamp burning when others called it useless. The machine does not answer to power or knowledge. It answers to faith. You believed in the lighthouse, and so it answered you. Her words struck deep in Darren's chest. All his life, he had been called stubborn, foolish even, for guarding an old tower that no one needed. But now, standing in this glowing chamber, he realized that his devotion had mattered more than he ever knew. The pillar pulsed with light, and Darren felt a pull toward it. Without thinking, he laid his hand on its surface. At once, the chamber brightened. Symbols lit up on the walls, racing like fire along hidden lines. The hum rose into a deep tone that filled the air. Darren gasped. Images flashed in his mind, stars, ships flying between them, great cities on worlds he did not know. He saw men and women who looked like him, their hands raised in triumph, their eyes shining with hope. He saw them building, reaching across space, leaving their mark among the stars. And then, he saw silence. Darkness. The cities gone, the ships broken. Humanity fading, until only a few sparks remained. The images faded, and Darren staggered back, his hand trembling. I saw us. Humans. We were among the stars once. Myra nodded. Yes. Long ago, your people reached further than you can dream. But time passed, wars burned, and memory was lost. The colonies that survived grew apart. I come from one such place. We still remembered Earth, though we did not know if it still lived. Darren's voice shook. So this machine, it is proof, Myra said. Proof that humans once had the power to build wonders greater than any other. This beacon was left behind, perhaps as a signal, perhaps as a weapon. It waits for the day Earth must rise again. Darren looked around the vast chamber, his heart heavy and proud at once. All his life he thought the lighthouse was just stone and lamp. Now he knew it was a key to humanity's forgotten past. But above them, faint echoes stirred the seekers. Darren could hear the distant thud of their steps on the cliff path. They were coming. They want this, Darren said grimly. They know what it is. Myra's face hardened. Yes. They believe humans are weak, that Earth has forgotten its strength. If they take the beacon, they will use it to chain you forever. Darren clenched his fists. Fear clawed at him, but so did anger. For generations, his family had kept this light alive, without ever knowing why. Now he finally understood. The lighthouse was never just for sailors. It was for all of humanity. The hum of the pillar grew stronger, almost as if it had heard his thoughts. The lines on its surface flared, casting the chamber in brilliant light. Myra stepped closer. It will fight with you. But only if you are ready to claim it. Darren stared at the pillar, his heart racing. He had never fought in his life. He was no soldier, no hero, just a keeper of a lamp. But maybe that was enough. He took a deep breath and placed both hands on the glowing surface. The chamber shook. The light shot upward, racing through the tunnels, flooding the lighthouse above. Outside, the lamp blazed to life again, brighter than the sun, casting its beam across the sea. The seekers stopped in their tracks, their masks turning toward the tower. The battle for the lighthouse had begun. The light from the lighthouse burst across the night sky, brighter than any flame, brighter than the moon. It washed over the sea in a wide beam, so strong that the water itself shimmered white. The townspeople gasped in fear and wonder, shielding their eyes. On the beach below, the seekers froze. Their tall bodies turned toward the tower, their masks reflecting the glow. The beam stretched past them, striking their black ship. At once, the vessel shuddered, its smooth surface rippling as if it were alive. A low sound, sharp and metallic, rang out across the water. Darren felt the machine beneath his hands thrum with power. The pillar inside the chamber pulsed like a heart, and the hum grew into a roar. His body shook, but he did not let go. The light was his now, and it answered his will. Myra stood beside him, her hair and clothes glowing in the brilliance. "Hold it steady," she said. "Guide the beam. It will follow your strength." Darren clenched his jaw, forcing himself to focus. He pictured the ship, dark and looming, and the light curved toward it, wrapping around it like chains. Sparks of white fire cracked across its hull. The seekers on the beach reacted at once. They raised their hands, and beams of blue light shot toward the lighthouse, striking the cliff walls. Stone exploded, sending shards tumbling down. The ground shook, but the tower stood firm. Myra's eyes blazed. She stepped forward, raising her arms. A shield of faint light formed around the chamber, blocking the blue blasts. "They will try to break through," she warned. "But the beacon is stronger. Use it." Darren gritted his teeth. The power was like holding back a storm with his bare hands. His muscles burned, his chest ached, but still he pushed. The beam of light grew sharper, cutting across the ship's hull. A deep crack appeared, glowing red. The seekers cried out in strange voices, retreating from the beam's reach. But they did not flee. Instead, they rushed toward the cliffs, climbing with inhuman speed. Their masks gleamed, their long fingers digging into stone as if it were clay. "They're coming for us," Darren shouted. Myra's voice was steady, though sweat beaded her brow. "Then we hold the tower. The light will not fall while you stand." Darren's heart pounded. He thought of his father, his grandfather, and all the keepers before him who had lit the lamp without ever knowing why. This was the reason. This was the night the lamp was more than a guide, it was a weapon, a shield, a flame for all of Earth. The first seeker reached the ledge outside the chamber. Its tall frame loomed in the doorway, its mask glowing faintly. It raised a hand, blue light gathering in its palm. But Myra was faster. She moved with sudden speed, striking her hand against the ground. A wave of white light surged upward, knocking the seeker back into the sea below. The water hissed as it struck the surface. Darren gasped. "You, how did you?" Myra's eyes flashed. "I told you. I come from the colonies. We still remember how to wield light. But my strength is small compared to this machine. Yours is the key, Darren. Yours." Darren turned back to the pillar, sweat dripping from his brow. His arms trembled, but he pressed harder, channeling the light toward the black ship. The crack on its hull widened. The vessel shook violently, beams of blue light spilling out as if it were bleeding. The other seekers cried out again, their voices sharp like broken metal. Two more climbed the cliff, leaping toward the lighthouse door. Myra fought them, her hands glowing, her movements quick as lightning. But there were too many. Darren, she cried. End it now. Strike the ship before it's too late. Darren's vision blurred. His arms felt like stone, but he refused to let go. With a roar, he forced every bit of his strength into the pillar. The beam above the lighthouse flared brighter, so bright it turned the night into day. The ship screamed. Its dark body split down the middle, fire and light pouring out as it collapsed into the sea. The water exploded upward, sending waves crashing against the shore. The seekers on the cliffs froze, their masks flashing once before they fell back, tumbling into the churning ocean. Silence followed. Only the crackle of the ruined ship and the crash of waves remained. The beam of the lighthouse faded slowly, its power settling back into the stone. Darren collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. His hands still tingled, his body shaking with exhaustion. Myra knelt beside him, her face pale but her eyes burning with pride. You did it, she said softly. You saved the town. You saved the light. Darren looked up at the glowing pillar, its hum softer now, almost gentle. He could feel its warmth inside him, as if it had accepted him fully. But Myra's voice grew heavy. This is not the end. The seekers will return. Others will come. The signal has gone far. More have heard it now. Darren's gaze hardened. He thought of his quiet town, of the fishermen, of the children who had watched the sky in fear. He thought of the lighthouse, standing tall for centuries, waiting for this moment. I will be ready, Darren said. His voice was steady, stronger than before. This light belongs to us. To all of us. I will keep it safe. Myra gave a small nod, her lips curving into the faintest smile. And outside, the beam of the lighthouse rose again, not as a weapon this time, but as a promise, a signal to the stars that Earth still had its guardians. Morning came slowly after the long night. The stormy sea calmed, though the waves still carried pieces of the broken black ship. Fishermen watched from the shore, whispering in awe. Some spoke of monsters, others of angels, but all agreed on one thing: the lighthouse had saved them. Darren stood on the balcony of the tower, looking out over the water. His body still ached from the battle, but inside he felt something new, a quiet strength, as if the light itself had settled into his heart. Myra joined him, her steps light, though her face carried both pride and worry. She leaned on the railing beside him, her eyes on the sea. They will come again, she said softly. The seekers do not give up. They will send more ships. They will bring stronger weapons. Darren nodded. Then we will be ready. Myra turned to him. You speak as if the lighthouse belongs to you alone. But this light, it belongs to Earth. To all its people. You cannot fight for it alone. Darren's jaw tightened. He thought of the villagers below, their frightened faces, their disbelief. They don't understand yet. But they will. Last night they saw the truth. They saw what the light can do. Myra studied him for a moment, then smiled faintly. Perhaps you are right. The keepers were chosen for a reason. Generations of your family lit the flame, never knowing its true power. And now the truth has returned. Darren looked at her. You came here for a reason too. Not just to hide, not just to warn me. Tell me the rest, Myra. What is your mission? For a long moment, Myra was silent. Then she sighed and spoke. Long ago, when humans left Earth for the stars, they built colonies far away. At first, there was hope. But the Seekers found us. They hunted us across the skies. Many fell. Some, like my people, survived by hiding in forgotten corners.